When I prepared for this video here, I was hugely inspired as I haven't been for a long time, because the story of BYD and the story of its CEO, Wang Chuan Fu, is the essence of hope and the essence of the American dream as it is propagated in so many Hollywood movies. But this guy lived the American dream all over in communist China. So stay tuned as we explore BYD, its CEO, and the future potential outlook for that company. Hello and welcome to another video by HKCM Global. My name is Joe and today we are already in part 5 out of 6 of our China Taking Over series, where we look at Chinese EV manufacturers and car manufacturers in general that are currently taking over the automotive industry and are about, or are they, to replace all European brands and American brands altogether. And if you brought some time with you, I would highly encourage you to also check out my video about NIO and XPeng. They should be listed down here. And especially the video regarding NIO sparked huge controversy because apparently I was not aware that there's so many religious fanatic fanboys of NIO out there. So the commentary section was just a battlefield. So if you're in for some drama, highly recommend you checking out that video. But now let's talk about BYD. The big one. And there is a reason that I have waited to make a video about BYD all the way up until part 5 of this series, because BYD, amongst all the Chinese car manufacturers, it is my favorite and it has a story like few others. And before we dive into that story of BYD and its CEO, let me open with a quote by Charlie Munger, the late great Charlie Munger, associate of Warren Buffett of Berkshire Hathaway. So Charlie Munger, before his death, said about BYD, "I have never in my life felt more privileged to be associated with something than I feel about BYD. What Wang Chuan Fu has done is a damn miracle." So what's he talking about there? Let me take you back all the way to 1966. Deeply communist China, Mao Zedong's great leap forward was just playing out to be a complete failure with millions dead in a famine. And in that time, Wang Chuan Fu was born to a super poor family. He was one sibling out of 10, with his mother being a housewife and his father being a carpenter. And already at a very early age, his father died and his mother then replaced him as the main breadwinner for the household. And as you can imagine, with many young kids at home, that's a hugely stressing job to do, and it proved to be too much for his mother because she only a couple of years later collapsed and also died, so he was a full-on orphan by that time. However, all his siblings really stuck together, and so the oldest one of the brothers then left school to become the main breadwinner to supply for the younger ones, and only the youngest sister of Wang Chuan Fu had to be sent to a foster family because they just weren't able to support her as well. However, Wang Chuan Fu from a very early age on was a rather bright child, and so he chose the path of education, and his siblings also recognized that the Wang Chuan Fu really is a smart kid, and so they collected all the money that they had to make that dream possible of sending him to school. Some of the already married sisters had to sell off their jewelry to pay for Wang Chuan Fu's education, and in 1983 he finally was accepted into Central South University in China, a very renowned university where he picked up studies in engineering. And Wang Chuan Fu didn't disappoint his family in university. He really excelled there in all the courses that he took, and at some point he was also elevated and picked the leader of the joint battery venture that was connected to this university. And in 1994, so at an age of 28 years, he discovered what he thought was a golden opportunity, because back in the time he read an article that Japan was starting to get rid of their nickel-cadmium battery production because it wasn't as profitable as some companies in Japan had hoped. And so he thought to himself, that sounds like a business opportunity that we could do here in China. And even though at the time he was already the general manager of that battery venture that he was leading, the company board dismissed him, and so he chose a rather bold path because he decided, at the time he was already married and he had a young child at home, he decided to leave his job and start from scratch a completely new company. And the banks that he approached regarding funding weren't very convinced with his ideas, so the only way that he was able to get funding was, first of all, to approach a cousin of his that had already grown rather wealthy, and then also to convince a friend of his to invest all his life savings into his freshly starting company. And so in 1995, with that borrowed company, he started up a little workshop in Shenzhen with only 2 employees and him being the head CEO, if you will. However, with the money that he had collected, they were not at all able to afford automation as it was the standard of the time in battery production. But he whipped out his calculator, did some calculations, and came up with the solution that basically, with the situation of the wages in China, it was more cost effective for him to just use up a lot of workers to build the battery line rather than to invest into heavy machinery. And so this approach, which wasn't really innovative at all, to be honest, turned out to be a huge success because at the end of the day, it was just more cost effective. And so it helped him with his company to very quickly gain traction and to become already a huge battery manufacturer only 2 years later, one of the biggest ones in China. And back at that time, he already started to implement the development of all the machinery necessary for the battery production in-house. So all the know-how necessary for battery production was not purchased from another company, but was developed in-house. And the story of BYD and him is completely filled with just bold, heroic stories. Like, for example, back in the day, where they were just gaining traction within China, he sent a saleswoman of his over to the headquarters of Motorola. Remember, that was the late 1990s, early 2000s. So Motorola was a huge phone manufacturer, and he sent his saleswoman over there to the United States. She barely spoke acceptable English, and she had just a bunch of papers, mostly in Chinese. However, she was so persistent that she really was able to convince executives over at Motorola to at least give the batteries produced by BYD a chance to see what they were worth. And so after giving BYD a chance, Motorola really found that those batteries by BYD were a better fit for their products than what they were currently using. And so only 7 years after building up that company with only 2 employees, BYD had grown to be the biggest manufacturer of nickel-cadmium batteries in the whole wide world, with a market share of 65%. And so only 1 year later, Wang Chuan Fu did something that turned out to be brilliant, but at that time looked completely foolish. He decided, you know what, we can build great batteries. Why not start building cars? No experience in the automotive industry. The guy didn't even have a driver license at the time. Yet they decided to buy a struggling Chinese car maker, and they just started implementing a few of their products. The initial cars that they had going on were not a success at all, but very quickly they started to develop somewhat of a BYD variant of the Toyota Corolla, and that car turned out to be a huge success. And in the very first year of rolling out that product to market, they sold 100,000 units. And so following that success, he repeated that formula with 2 other cars, the F3R and the F6, which was also copies of successful Western cars, only with a BYD badge on them. And of course, way more cost efficient and tailored to the Chinese market. And back then already, when they had only 3 successful models going only in the Chinese market, back then in 2007, Wang Chuan Fu already announced to his company their clear path forward. So he announced that by 2015, they would be the #1 car maker in China, and by 2025, they would be a leading car producer in the whole wide world. So a wild and outrageous vision for a company that only started to even get into the automotive industry 4 years ago. And there are stories upon stories concerning Wang Chuan Fu. For example, back in 2010s it was, I believe, when they really struggled with their build quality, he went over to a local Mercedes dealership where he bought the newest S-Class, drove them straight into the workshop and said, all the engineers get together, take that car apart. I want to build something like this. And so as we are already in 2025, this of course brings us to one question. Where is BYD at on that track? And as it's just the middle of 2025, of course, we have to go with the 2024 numbers. So in 2024 alone, BYD has sold 4.3 million cars. For comparison, the whole Volkswagen conglomerate, so that's Volkswagen, Audi, Seat, Skoda, Porsche, Lamborghini, Bugatti, all of them combined, 9 million cars total. So BYD already in 2024 was at half the production capacity that the whole Volkswagen group was doing. And all of that, keep in mind, all of that, whilst Volkswagen is just completely stagnating. I brought here some charts for you. So let's maybe look at market cap, right? So the overall stock traded value of the company Volkswagen, the whole conglomerate, Volkswagen right now sits at a market cap of $54 billion. BYD, as of today, sits at a value of $150 billion. So already shareholders deem BYD to be threefold as valuable as Volkswagen, with all its subsidiaries and all the brands connected to it. But of course, the story of growth underlying that is a completely different one. BYD in 1 year, 38% of increase in market cap. Volkswagen in the last year, minus 2%. And it even becomes more apparent if we look at revenue, for example. So starting off from 2010, so over the last 15 years, Volkswagen has grown from $170 billion to $350. So they doubled their revenue in 15 years. BYD, starting in 2010, we don't even have data as far back as 2010. Apparently, no, we do have. So back in 2010, 7 billion, right now 114 billion in revenue. So that's even more than a 16-fold increase. So they're over 8 times as quickly growing as Volkswagen. If we look at earnings, remember BYD, their main market edge is their pricing. They're super competitive in their pricing. Great. Tremendous value on their cars. Cheap cars, but good quality for the price. However, if we look at earnings, right? Volkswagen earnings currently sitting at 15 billion with their 9 billion cars sold. BYD with their 4.5 billion cars sold, sitting at $8 billion. So even though their cars are so incredibly cheap, they still manage to pretty much earn the very same amount per unit as Volkswagen is able to. That's absolutely mind-blowing to me. And as you know from the series, we have to look at the company itself now before we go into the charts. So BYD, the company known for their full-on integration of everything in that whole process. You might maybe not even be surprised that they also own their very own shipping vehicles, like this huge cargo ship that they frequently use to deliver their cars. Something that I would also love to bring your attention to. This right here is the headquarters of BYD in Shenzhen. And what you can see here, so first of all, a huge office complex, over here production facilities. But do you see those high-rise apartment buildings? That is residential areas for the workers of BYD. Over there, there's even more, because that process of full-on vertical integration that Wang Chuan Fu did pursue did not even end with the production facilities. He also integrated on company grounds apartment buildings, restaurants, and he tried hard to establish a culture of all of the BYD employees of working together, living together, developing together, BYD building their dreams together. Maybe I'm getting carried away here, but as I told you before, hugely inspiring story and great vision here by that guy, Wang Chuan Fu. So let's see what else they have going on. Of course, globalization, that is their target. They also, by the way, have other companies as subsidiaries to BYD. So other car brands where they aim more at the luxury market. We will not go into those right now. And one of their most important products, you remember, they were a battery company from the get-go. They developed their Blade batteries, which are amongst the most cutting-edge batteries out there. And by now, Tesla is using BYD's batteries in their cars because Tesla, as a huge technology leader in the field, is not able to produce batteries as competitively as BYD is selling them. Then there's some other bragging about their technology, but what I find more interesting is bringing you over to their current cars. So right now in the US, for example, they only sell the BYD Han because they're only in the very beginning stages of rolling out their production to the rest of the world. Right now, for example, in Brazil, they have a huge foothold in the market already. But in parts of the Western world like United States and also Europe, there's not that much BYD availability already. But since this video today has already been going on for so long, one car is really enough to take a look at. So what do we see here? The BYD Han. I don't know what that is for. Yeah, okay, retracting door handles. That's nice. They have 5 colors available. And I mean, as we just mentioned, right? BYD is mainly competitive because of their tremendously good pricing. So I do not expect some huge innovative tech in here. Yeah, nice interior. Nice interior. I do like it. I do not know what I think about this gear lever here. I don't think I like it. It's a little too much for my taste. But overall, nice looking interior. Really nice looking interior. 3.9 seconds 0 to 60. That's the 2 specs that they offer. Oh, and apparently you can do karaoke in the car. not bad. But now finally, at last, let's get to the meat of it. What is our outlook here for BYD? But before we dive into those charts, if you are new to this channel here and you do not know us, we are not a car channel, we are not a history channel, we are a financial analytics company, and so we analyze stock prices on a daily basis with our Elliott Wave analysis, and we offer 200 markets that we analyze on a daily basis. So that is cryptocurrencies, that is companies, stocks like BYD, that is also commodities. Link down there in the description, taking you to our website. If you are an investor to the financial markets, you can get push notifications, you can get updates to every single scenario that we have on the chart. You will get updates to our model portfolio. So if that is of interest to you, and if you want to bring a bit more certainty and structure to your financial investments, I highly recommend you checking out that link. So BYD has been, ever since this triangle that we have seen here to complete this overreaching wave 4, we have ever since now been in this ongoing wave 5, so the final wave of the overreaching wave 1 that we expect to come to an end here in this area around 190 to 200 Hong Kong dollars. And within this ongoing here wave 5, we have so far seen a 1, 2, 3, 4 wave structure. So we are in the early beginning stages of this final wave 5. So we really are in the very last leg of this bull run here for BYD before we see a rather substantial correction coming into the stock of BYD. And in the most recent future, you can see here we had a successful short target zone here at the wave B top, racking in all the way to the bottom 35% of profits here. We did also have an additional short target zone here, which was successful only in the meantime. So from here all the way down to, so you see over there, we just dipped deeper into the target zone. So this was not an overshooting of the target zone. So all the way to the low here, we have potentially racked in another 20%. Or if you had entered the market just here at the very lower boundary and would have had your stop over there 1% above the upper threshold of the target zone, as we usually recommend, you would have lost a 10% here. So that just for the sake of transparency, back then we had concluded that the overreaching wave 5 top had already been in here at this stage, which it wasn't. And so now the clear primary scenario has to be another high here for this overreaching wave 5 to complete this overreaching wave 1 top here, and only then a huge correction coming into BYD, potentially bringing us all the way down in the area of 50 Hong Kong dollars again. So if we are to go there, huge buying opportunity. I would love to get into BYD at these incredible prices down here in the longer time frame than here. What would that mean? On the longer time frame here, you can see that we have established here on the chart not a target zone like this one here, but we have established a trading area. Trading areas are huge long-term buying opportunities that we bring on the charts only every other blue moon. So rare opportunities for you to get into a stock at price levels that probably will not be revisited in years or maybe not even ever. That is what we see coming up here for BYD in this trading area between 34 Hong Kong dollars all the way up to 61 Hong Kong dollars here in the future for BYD. And only then here, after having completed this wave 2 corrective mode into this trading area, would we see another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves upward structure to an overreaching wave 4. We would only then see another substantial long-term correction coming into the stock of BYD. So I hope that was helpful for you. Hope you learned a lot and hope you were also as inspired as I was in the process of making this video. So stay tuned and do not forget to subscribe for the last and final video of the China Taking Over series. See you next one. Take care. Bye bye.